Hi, I'm Bob. I'm the volunteer coordinator for our Fair Carousel. I want to thank you for volunteering for our Fair Carousel, of attending our training. You received your manual. Keep the manual where you'll be able to find it. Thank you. I want to go over some of the history right now of the carousel. And yes, it does start at the Minnesota State Fair. And the State Fair started in 1885 in Hamlin, Minnesota. And the fair had all the things you expected. Of course, it focused on agriculture, our economy here in Minnesota. So it had a lot of the things that it has even today. Machinery Hill, it has all kinds of food vendors, it has entertainment, it has all these things that you kind of would expect. The Agriculture Society had taken over the carousel in about 1914, and at that point in time there was some discussion, some concern about some of the entertainment that was available at the fair. It was felt it was kind of scandalous. They had maybe too much gambling, they had scantily clothed ladies, and so they wanted to address this. They wanted no more shady concessionaries, and they needed wholesome entertainment. Well, in stepped one of the concessionaires. He was an owner and an operator of rides already. He was. And so who came in then was, name is Austin McFadden. Austin McFadden made a proposition to the Agriculture Society that he would bring in wholesome entertainment. He would bring in one roller coaster and also a very large carousel. And in his proposal, these rides could not be located where the regular rides were. They had to have their own place on the grounds. And the carousel itself found itself on Commonwealth, just 4 blocks off of the main entrance. So that worked out well. So he wanted a long-term understanding and program that he would be a part of, and he would have promise wholesome entertainment. So in August, or actually I want to say in April of 1914, the plan was accepted, approved. And so now Austin had just until Labor Day of that same year to get that roller coaster made, carousel, and have it delivered and operational on Labor Day. And so that was quite the challenge. So it was a very large carousel, 68 horses, all jumpers, they all go up and down, 2 chariots, and then the large roller coaster as well. And so they were in fact delivered and were operational on Labor Day at the Minnesota State Fair. Now they operated carousel fine for the first 3 days, but the evening of Wednesday of that week in 1914, the carousel did break down. So its main support had given way, and that was a huge timber, pine, that the main bearing would ride on top of that timber, and it had to be repaired. And it was repaired, so it was available before that fair was done, keeping in mind the fair was 6 days in length in those years. So we were moving forward, and I want to let you know that that this carousel and the roller coaster was built by the Philadelphia Toboggan Company, the Cadillac company of building carousels and roller coasters as well. So the agreement was made, and we had a long time run of the carousel at the State Fair. Now it was designated as PTC 33, it still is today, and that is the Philadelphia Toboggan Company. It was the 3rd carousel that they built. And a little later on we'll talk about the unknown carver, and it took till 1988 and beyond before we actually found out about who was the unknown carver in the carving shop. So I wanted to move forward and show you that here's the carousel, the world's largest carousel. They did promote it as that. And people were lining up, and yes, it was a success. It was a moneymaker. Keeping in mind that Austin McFadden paid $8,500 for this carousel when it was new. So here we have the roller coaster, and the roller coaster ride the Cannonball Coaster. And now the coaster didn't last a whole lot of years at the State Fair, but it was part of one of the rides, of two rides. And you see there, 15 cents to ride the coaster. Similarly, 15 cents to ride the carousel. So in moving ahead, June 2nd, 1939, there was a careless smoker in a trailer parked next to the carousel on the fairgrounds, and a fire happened. And the fire hit the wooden building of the carousel, went up the walls, went onto the roof, and the fire department, of course, did respond, St. Paul, and they were able to put out the fire. 28 horses were damaged. The band organ was on that same wall in which the fire began, and so the band organ was a complete loss. About 28 horses were damaged. Here you see some of the charcoaling that was remained after all the paint was returned to this particular horse. So you do see that. Here you're seeing a little closer view of that charcoaling look that happened. Now on the report, the St. Paul fire report had indicated that what kept this from being a total loss, this carousel, was the fact that nobody opened up any of those garage doors. So it was rescued at that point. Now, I want to say that in 1988, that the owners of the carousel were dealing with an auction house in New York, and they had consigned the horses to the auction house to be auctioned off horse by horse. The demand for horses and the prices on there were high at the time, and so this was never to be publicized for two reasons. One, Minnesotans would not like the idea of this carousel leaving Minnesota, and two, that 48 horses were still in a not very secure building on the state fairgrounds, but it did get out. So a lot of people, I'm sure, were concerned about it, were talking about it. Well, a local couple, Peter Bowen and Nancy Peterson, they actually moved on this. And they said, let's try to save it. If we don't, we at least tried. And so they started our Fair Carousel. And when they did that, it's a nonprofit, and it hit the papers that we're looking to take on this project, we're looking to save this carousel, we're looking for donations. This is one of the donations that came in. It says, "Dear sir, I would like to give you some of my money I took from my bank, and it's for my favorite Pinto." And so this was from, in fact, a 6-year-old girl, Kim Taylor. And a little sidelight, Kim Taylor, when she turned 21, her folks adopted a horse. So we do have the Adopt a Horse program, and they start at $5,000 and go up to $25,000 to adopt a horse. I do want to show you Kim's favorite Pinto. And there it is. And it's on the carousel today. It is there in all its beauty. So what else had to happen? Well, we had to have an initial board to control, to manage this beautiful heirloom, our Fair Carousel. And so Peter contacted individuals that made a bigger donation, $100 or more. And one of the donors had said, "Sure, I will serve on the board." But he says, by the way, he says, "What would it cost for me? How much money would I donate to get naming rights?" Well, he didn't know, so he held the phone. He asked Nancy, and Nancy, this was her area of expertise, and said it has to be at least half. So he got back on the phone, and he said, "Well, that would be $600,000." And he heard words, magic, if you will. He says, "Done." So he was going to donate the $600,000. Well, what happened beyond that is that this donor, this mystery donor, was not revealed for a full year before he was out. It was ever revealed who this donor was, mystery donor was. So they did, in fact, Nancy and Peter went out to New York and to the auction, and they had in their hand paperwork from the city of St. Paul that said they would back it up to $1.2 million. And so they had put a bid to keep this carousel totally together for $1.32 million. And the auction was started. A horse was wheeled out, which was not on the program right there. And the announcement was made that our nonprofit, our Fair Carousel, is purchasing this carousel in its entirety for this amount, and there would be no additional bids. So that was really important, that there were no additional bids. So it really helped us to, as an organization, to save this carousel. Okay. So this denotes here in 1989, our Fair Carousel was operated by volunteers, our Fair Carousel volunteers. And in the process of doing that and operating the carousel for that particular year, 1989, from ride revenue, from the products, they had some shirts and buttons that they sold, and from all of that, they raised over $271,000. So that was a nice amount to go to the project to pay this particular bill, if you will, pay this carousel off. Well, actually, the carousel went to the town square, and when it was in the town square, a band organ was added to the carousel. And on that, the band organ, here it is, and it actually shows and indicates our biggest donor. Biggest donor was Gerald C. Kafestian, and it says Kafestian Carousel. So it was the first time that a band organ was on this carousel for over 50 years. And Gerald Kafestian bought this band organ, and we have our expert that has restored and maintains this organ to this day. And his name is Mike Merrick. So we do have that to report. Now we're getting to the point where it's getting kind of close. We have to continue to pay, of course, and get this completely paid off. And so there was like a $400,000 balance. And what happened was, once again, the city of St. Paul came through, and they guaranteed that money. And through ride revenue over years, it is clear and free, the carousel. It is clear and free. Okay. There, in fact, is Peter Bowen, and the restoration took many years, in fact, to restore all these horses in this carousel. Pretty much in the 1990s, pretty much the entire decade was used to restore the carousel and the horses. And there he is, kind of looking over and overseeing the restoration right there. I wanted to show you this. This is a repair that was done so many years earlier. We wanted to leave it. The horse's leg was repaired with an Ovaltine can. Some of you know what that is, and some of you don't, as I date myself. Now this is Linda McDonald. Linda McDonald was in charge of all of the restoration of all the paint on all of the horses. So that, in fact, was her job. She comes back several times each year. Linda now lives in Texas. She is in Texas. But beautiful work that she is doing, and very meticulous with her work. Now here you see they're wearing protection for not to breathe in any of the toxins, if you will. Because what they had to do is they had to take layers and layers and layers of varnish off of these horses and get down and leave the original paint. Amazing process. I'm not sure how they do it, but they did it. Now, our mystery carver was finally identified with some time and some effort. This is our mystery carver. His name is Dave Lightfoot. Dave Lightfoot was in charge of the carving shop, and his influenced all the horses that are on this carousel. and beautiful as they are. He's got a little carousel horse that he is, not a carousel horse, but a little rocking horse that he made for one of his kids. We have one of these horses, in fact, at the carousel. You'll see it in the window display. This is the carousel, this beautiful, beautiful pavilion that resides at Como Park, and that's where we are today. And again, Gerald Kafeshian helped out in purchasing and paying for this beautiful pavilion. All in all, he donated over $1 million to, in the end, to the project. Now here we are, an inside shot and of the carousel. You see the alligator horse in the bottom right corner? Well, that horse there was a pre-bid for that auction in 1988 for $100,000. So it gives you a little bit of an idea about the heirloom that has been rescued right here in Minnesota. This kind of demonstrates the individual workers. This is an electrical worker, and the Electrical Union 110 had donated the services and all the equipment they needed and all of the product they needed to bring this carousel up to code electrically. And so we were very blessed to have them as well. This, in fact, is our mystery donor, and it's Gerald C. Kafeshian, and this is one of his miniature carousels that he has and owned, and we will always be in his debt. We will be. This is Peter Bowen, kind of looking at the carousel as it turns, and this is something he and his wife had put almost, in fact, 30 years. Quite the project and quite the savings. This was a limited edition print that was commissioned, and it denoted 1914 to 1989 at the Minnesota State Fair, our carousel horses there. At this point, I would like to once again thank you for being a part of the next chapter of saving, of restoring, of keeping this beautiful heirloom, our Fair Carousel turning. I want to finish with this. Kafeshian Carousel, making and renewing memories.